when he said it. I've come to explain the Father. Jesus would say, if you have seen me, you've seen the Father. He would say, the writer of John would say that God incarnate came in the flesh, and he has explained him. Jesus was, if you want to understand what God is like, if you want to touch him, if you want contact, if you want to understand all the mysteries of immortality and purpose and meaning and be connected to God, Jesus said, I'm the way, I'm the truth and the life. And then he proved it with miracles, and he taught like no one else, and he raised people from the dead. And all of history hinges on this time before Christ and this time of his death and his resurrection. And it's interesting to hear what Jesus says about rules and ritual and religion. Notice he says in Luke 11:39, you Pharisees clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you're full of greed and wickedness. Translation, it's not about rules. It's not about external rules and keeping rules. It's not about performance. Notice what Jesus says in Mark 7:13. He says to them, thus you nullify the word of God by your traditions that you have handed down, and you do many such things. Translation, it's not about ritual. It's not about tradition. It's not about how many times you pray, what direction you pray, how many candles you light, what kind of robes you wear, what days you do certain things. Rituals have no power to build a relationship with God. Jesus goes on to say in Luke 16:15, you are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of men, but God knows your hearts. What is highly valued among men is detestable in the sight of God. Translation, it's not about religion. It's not about external forms. It's not about systems of do's and don'ts and belief systems. It's about issues of the heart. It's about being seen by God and being right with God. As men go to seek God and touch him, notice what Jesus says in Matthew 6:5. He says, and when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on street corners. Why? To be seen by men. I tell you the truth, they've received the reward in full. Translation, when you seek to touch God, warning, motive is paramount. Religion and rules and ritual are almost always twisted in ways to serve people, to put people in positions of power, and some are in and some are out. And rules and rituals and religion are used to exalt men and impress people, and they are fruitless in the real knowledge of God. Finally, Jesus says in Matthew 6, and when you pray, don't keep on babbling like the pagans, for they think or they believe that they'll be heard because of their many words. Warning number 2, human performance is a vain attempt to touch the Creator. Jesus would say communion with God is not about rules. Communion with God is not about rituals. Communion with God is not about man-made religions. So then the question is, Jesus, how do we commune with God? How do you touch the invisible? How do you know your Creator? How can you be known and this mystery of life and life after death and why am I here and what's my purpose and how can I touch God? Jesus, please explain. And so Jesus does. He made outrageous claims, and the people that were closest to him could spot anything that was false. His disciples. They ate with him. They traveled with him. Early in the morning, late at night. They saw him under pressure. They saw him when he was tired. They watched him speak, they watched him pray, they watched him do miracles. But there was something that he did that attracted them more than all else. It's when he communed with the Father, when he modeled for them how they indeed could touch God. And so notice in Luke chapter 11, after observing Jesus' deep communion with the Father, the disciples make a request. Notice how it opens up. On one day, verse 1, Jesus was praying in a certain place. You get the idea that he's praying, and the disciples are close enough to hear, and it's almost as if they're here and they're waiting, and he's praying. And they've watched this happen multitudes of times. There's times where they said, go ahead, and he went up to pray. There's times when they've prayed as a regular practice in the garden. There's other times when he said, you too, you come with me and we'll pray. There's times when they went in a room and he would pray and do a miracle. This time he's praying, and as he's praying, the disciples are watching, and they can ask him anything. But there's something about the way he talks with the Father. There's something about the reality of his relationship that he's modeling that causes a request to be formed in their mind and their heart. And as he was praying, when he was finished, one of the disciples said to him, Lord, teach us to pray.